Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Sideline Banter, brought to you by the Women of Fantasy Football channel. If you have not already, make sure you like and subscribe so that way you do not miss a single episode of Sideline Banter, but as well as all the amazing other content that they have to offer. I am joined, of course, as always, by my lovely co-host, Derek Tate. I am Sam Holt. Tate, how are you after this crazy week 6? We did not leave it unscathed. There were some great games. There were some bad ones, but oh man, lots of good football.
Fantasy scoring down across the board, but bear down Chicago Bears because it was a messy ending there at the very end.
Yeah,
I thought Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt may have lost a second fumble on the night, but the last one that kind of sealed the Commanders' fate was actually Jaden Daniels' self-fumble for the second time in this game. It was a wild one, but the Bears have gone now 1-3 in a row after an 0-2 start. Not bad.
Not bad. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to penalize Jaden Daniels too much because he is coming back off of an injury. So, he's got I don't know. I'm trying not to be too mean because I do just love him so dearly. And when you deal with a mechanical issue like your knee and a lower extremity issue, it's going to take a minute to feel comfortable in the pocket and under pressure, and he's so amazing at scrambling. I feel like this is just going to be an odd week. It's going to be a blip. He's going to continue to get better, and of course he's wearing a brace, which he doesn't want to be wearing, and he's uncomfortable with that too.
It also doesn't help that he doesn't have Terry McLaurin for this contest. It also doesn't help that Deebo Samuel was a game time decision with a heel injury, which to me looked like it impacted his play on the field. He wasn't quite as dynamic and explosive as he's been throughout his entire tenure here in Washington. So the Bears capitalized on what was an ugly game, and the Bears were far from perfect in this one, but they managed to get enough plays and how about Jake Moody? Like the San Francisco 49ers, let him go. They bring in a kicker. He gets his foot stepped on. He gets hurt. Everybody's hurt in San Francisco, but it worked out as Jake Moody hits the game-winning field goal as time expires. Go figure.
Everybody wins. Everyone helps. I mean, let's talk a little bit more just because we don't always get the chance to quickly break down Monday Night Football, but spoiler alert, we are pre-recording this. I really appreciate Tate being such a good sport about it. I have some traveling to do this week for the amazing Women of Fantasy Football. They are sending me to an amazing conference for women with Galvanize. I will be sure to be posting all about that this week. I'm super excited, but this is pre-recorded.
My invite was lost in the mail, but I hope you have a great time. No, I'm kidding.
I know it's gonna be so much fun. I'm excited. Laura Oakman is an amazing mentor as well as proponent of bringing more women into sports media in all kinds of ways, and so it's just going to be a really fun time. But this is me quickly burying the lead. This is pre-recorded. If there's other injury news that comes out Tuesday morning, we're going to be missing it, but we'll be sure to post about it on X. I want to talk about this game specifically, or tonight's games, because I don't know about you, and maybe I feel like you and I are kind of cut from the same cloth in a lot of ways, but I was already up by about 70 points in one league, and it's one that's a dynasty league. So for myself, when I can pour on more points to just see how stacked my team is, I get insanely excited. I become Kylo Ren in that Star Wars film where I'm just screaming at the TV for more. Yeah, I want it to hurt. And at that point, when I'm already winning by so much, I want to be the high score for the week because then I can rub it in all of their faces why I'm so much better than them. And all of that to say, Bijan Robinson for the win. And I didn't need him to win, but oh my God, 170 yards, rushing touchdown, 6 receptions for 68 yards. According to NFL Fantasy, an average of 35.8 fantasy points. Wow. I was elated.
Yeah, he looks like him and Jonathan Taylor right now are kind of jockeying for position for the best running back in the NFL in 2025. So it must be fun to watch your team just pour it on, so to say. And I like the Kylo Ren reference. I get that one.
I knew you would.
It's a movie made past 2000. There's a chance that I don't get the reference, but I got that one.
I try to pick references I know you're going to know because I feel like we usually end up with the same ones. But it just in terms of running backs, let's just talk running backs for week 6 really quickly. at the top of fantasy points, you've got Bijan, you've got Rico Dowdle, another stellar week for him. I mean, we talked about him having a revenge game last week against his former team, but this week against his former team, but he just wants to keep pouring it on, and I don't want it to stop. He was quoted after the game saying, because they wanted to reference his quote of like, what do you want to tell your former team? He said he wanted them to buckle up. And then they said afterwards, what are your final words to them? He said they didn't buckle up. Like, they weren't ready for him, and he was so ready. Again, for him, 183 rushing yards, 4 receptions, 56 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown. Wow. Another amazing performance.
Yeah, I was optimistic that he was going to have a good game. I thought he would find the end zone. It was part of last week's petty parlays, but I did not see an encore performance of him going over 150 yards rushing for a second straight game. That's not even doing it justice. It was 180 yards 2 weeks in a row that he's topped on the ground alone.
Wild.
I get that he's played the Miami defense and the Dallas defense in back-to-back weeks, and those are two of the worst units in the NFL, and you can argue they're just doing their job by torching these defenses. But I think, Sam, it's gotten pretty interesting. A conversation. How do you go back to Chuba Hubbard as the definitive lead guy in this backfield when you've seen Dowdle go for 180 yards rushing in 2 consecutive games?
It's creating an interesting conversation, isn't it? Because the NFC South is usually already kind of spoken for. And we can talk about your Bucks later. I'll, of course, allow you to stand on your soapbox. You have every right to say everything you want about your Bucks. They're crushing it. But the Panthers have not had much to sneeze at in recent years in terms of things to be standing on. They've been in a consistent level of rebuild for quite some time. And they're now coming off back-to-back wins, about to go see the Jets. I mean, unfortunately, they are going to be at MetLife Stadium. That's the only drawback I'm seeing in this matchup is the stadium and that field. But they could be setting themselves up for an interesting set of wins going forward. We obviously just watched the Bills lose. That's their next one after the Jets. Then they've got Packers, a very stout defense, and then Saints and Falcons again. We could be talking about them being top 2 in that division.
I mean, they're at 500 right now. As hard as that is to believe,
it's wild.
And times that we've seen them just get, waxed, and you're wondering if Dave Canales is on the hot seat, and, the Bryce Young experiment looks like it's, going south quickly. This team is 3-3, Sam, and they have a real opportunity to get above 500 in the month of October, which we haven't been able to say that about the Panthers in quite some time. No. So it's exciting for a young team to get some momentum, and that the NFC South with the Panthers and even with the Atlanta Falcons and their win tonight over the Buffalo Bills, Sam. I mean, as much as the win against the Dallas Cowboys for the Carolina Panthers is nice, I came away pretty damn impressed with the Atlanta Falcons tonight.
Oh, I was extremely impressed by them as well. And I do want to circle back to your question of like, how are they going to start Chuba Hubbard again? I think what I feel like I've learned from these couple weeks with Dowdle is how strong the run game is. And Chuba Hubbard has had amazing success before Rico Dowdle has burst onto the scene and shown us everything that he has up his sleeves. I do feel like this is an interesting split to the backfield. This kind of feels like it has the potential to be a la the Lions when we first had Montgomery and Gibbs, and it was just a dual back-to-back. They're just crushing teams with an immense running game because both are very capable in the pass game as well. And we haven't necessarily had an amazing, we've got Ted McMillan there, but they're lacking depth at receivers, I think, when it comes to other teams and by comparison. I do feel like this is something where they can go back and forth between the two. Maybe we're not going to see equal, plus 30 fantasy points from both of them in every given week. It's going to start to taper off, and we're going to have to deal with that. But I do feel like this is proving this offense has legs in this run game.
Well, I think it has a pulse now.
It does.
I don't know if I'm willing to go as far as they've.
Am I too excited?
I think maybe a little bit. It's hard not to be optimistic after what we just saw in back-to-back weeks from Rico Dowdle. But I want again, the two defenses that they torched. is, I think,
it says a lot.
It's going to be more often than not the Miami Dolphins and the Dallas Cowboys giving up a lot of yards and a lot of points to opposing offenses. That's what we've seen so far this season. We saw it in even a Panthers offense that was kind of struggling throughout the first month of the season, find their footing when they play these two bad defenses. I'm optimistic that they may have something here. I actually think that it may be Rico Dowdle's backfield. It's going to still be a split. I think Chuba Hubbard has a role, but I just don't know how you can take the ball out of Dowdle's hands right now and just give it right back to Chuba after what we just, saw like a historic 2-game stretch from Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, no, I don't know that he wants to give up the ball either. He's kind of got that, like, it's mine until you take it away from me forcefully kind of an attitude about it. And I kind of love it. I mean, his entire attitude going into these last 2 games has been very much, I've been here. Like, he doesn't want people to, it doesn't seem like he is enjoying the conversation of like, oh, and now this is amazing. He's like, I've always been good. I've always been working. I've always been dialing in. And he clearly just hasn't been given the opportunity, and he has that now. And he is absolutely not squandering it. So I kind of love that. And I kind of compared him to, the Hulk with Bruce Banner, where he's just like, what's the secret? The secret is I'm always angry. And like, I think you're finally just like unlocking the secret code for Dowdle to just like burst onto the scene.
I hope you're right. It feels like they could potentially be finding an identity.
Yeah.
And for an offense that felt like it was, puttering, stuck in neutral for most of the first month of the year, it feels encouraging with Dowdle kind of having, an outstanding 2-game stretch, that they may have something here that they can build around moving forward for a young team.
Definitely. All right. Just one more player I want to talk about just from week 6 before we jump into plenty of injuries, which is going to lead us straight into waivers. I want to talk about Cam Skattebo and the Giants, because that was another incredible game to watch in terms of, I want to say showmanship, but like it was just a spectacular game to watch in how the Giants handled the Eagles in this one. And also just looking at the points that Cam walked away with. So he had 98 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Yes, 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 cute little receptions for 12 yards. But the 3 rushing touchdowns just gets you. This is a guy that, eats crayons for the flavors and the colors. Like, he's just having so much fun, and he's fun to watch. I have him in several leagues, and I'm very excited that I do. This is an interesting Giants team. They now finally have legs to stand on, thanks to Dart, thanks to Cam, but they've got a really tough matchup coming up this week. And I'm just curious, was this a flash in the pan, or do we feel like the Giants, as the fans are saying, are back, baby?
Speaking of identities, this team now has one offensively. Jackson Dart, it's going to be a work in progress through the air, because it's more so they just don't have the weapons on the outside right now, Sam. I know they're making it work with Wan'Dale Robinson and, Theo Johnson being sprinkled in, and, Cam Skattebo, like you said, a cute 12 yards receiving or whatever it was. But the identity is going to be Jackson Dart being able to make some magic happen with either with his arm or his legs on third downs, and a heavy dose of Cam Skattebo. And that's not a bad formula when you just need something from this offense and you have as much talent as you have on the defensive side of the football, up front in particular. So you're starting to see how the path to playing competitive football on a consistent basis there in New York. Making a statement like that and just punching the defending Super Bowl champions in the mouth, who are known for their physicality, certainly a very encouraging moment. And from a fantasy lens, Cam Skattebo is, I think, a top 20 play at the running back position moving forward.
Yeah, I definitely think he's not only does he deserve a spot in your lineups, he deserves a starting spot in your lineups. This is no longer like should I flex him in? Like he's earned a spot. He's earned a spot on your roster. He needs to be started as much as you can. And of course, depending on your roster setup, who else you have, maybe you can make an argument for benching him. But I feel like I'd be hard pressed considering how other players have dropped off as far as we're into week 6. You're just happy to have a bright spot on your roster like him that's going to be feeding yards onto your
volume. I mean, he's a volume play. And you know, when you get inside the 5-yard line in the years past with the Giants, they outside of, Saquon, and even when they had Saquon, they still had issues. And there's still going to be some games where that Giants offensive line bites them in the tail and they just can't get anything going consistently. But that guy's a hammer when they get down inside the 5-yard line. And he's in the conversation for one of the best finishers in short yardage situations right now.
Yeah. No, he's an insane finisher. And yes, this is exactly the time you want someone to be popping off your roster right now too. Week 6, you've got plenty of bye weeks coming up for other teams. You want to feel confident in the depth that you have at the position where you drafted him. You didn't have to spend too much to get him. So you feel really good about his position on your roster as well. But that's as much as I'm going to pump the tires on the Giants for now. I will get to the things I don't want to talk about, which are the injury news, which is going to affect us, and talking about waivers going into the rest of Week 7. Top of the list right there. Fred Warner out for the season with a broken and dislocated ankle. Brutal injury. This goes into the question in the category of, I thought we agreed we weren't showing replays of these injuries, because as soon as you click it, it's just the foot's never meant to point the direction that it points. And I just, you feel for the guy as he's being carted off with the air cast on, and for the Niners adding to their ever-growing list of injuries. Tate, how do the Niners continue to find sparks where it just feels like players keep getting taken away from them?
Yeah, I thought they really battled against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I thought that they did a really good job staying competitive in that game. And when you lose, I mean, you already lost Nick Bosa, who is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and Fred Warner felt like the duct tape that was holding up the sinking ship. Yeah. He was the captain that was keeping that thing afloat longer than it really should have stayed functional. And now you lose him. And I'm really concerned about that 49ers defense on all fronts. I don't think they're going to be able to get after the quarterback consistently. Now with Fred Warner, you lose one of the best, all-around linebackers, arguably the best one in the entire NFL. I worry that teams are going to be able to run the football on the Niners. I worry that the effectiveness of being able to slow down passing attacks without Fred Warner being able to get all of these young players, Sam, into position pre-snap and communicate. He's one of the best communicators on the field. He's a field general for real. And that is such a devastating loss to a team that it feels like overnight, it feels like a restaurant that has just lost everybody to the different multitude of reasons. And there's no one left but the hostess there, which is Kyle Shanahan, the head coach, trying to figure things out. And the whole place could go up in smoke really quick if the 49ers don't start getting healthy, the players that are even capable of coming back in 2025.
It also, speaking of Kyle Shanahan too, it's just, you notice there's trends as teams are being covered throughout a season where, depending on what happens in the game, the camera goes to a specific player, a specific coach. As soon as any player goes down in any way on the field, the camera's quickness to go to Kyle Shanahan's face is trolling at this point, because this man has been through the ringer and this poor guy needs a win, because as soon as you saw it and the camera went to Kyle, it was just dejected. It was heart-wrenching, honestly. I'm not even a Niners fan, but it broke me a little bit.
When I saw Kyle Shanahan's face after Fred Warner's injury, it felt like the image of Ben Affleck holding a cigarette outside and just going, just exhaling and just going, F my life. Like, and it's a part of the game.
It is.
It does feel cruel, though, that the 49ers have lost, multiple all-pro caliber players on both sides of the ball, and they're still 4-2, which is a major hat tip to Kyle Shanahan. But I just don't know how much longer they can survive with the losses on both sides of the ball just piling up as the season progresses.
Trying to find something positive. It does look like, according to Kyle Shanahan, George Kittle was expected to practice Monday today.
Good.
Yeah. So, fingers crossed, even if it's just a little warm up here or there, let's get some life. Talk about another player that's an amazing invigorator of players of the locker room. George Kittle is an amazing force of a man, and the way that he pumps up his team is something else. So if the Niners can get him back, and I'm sure fantasy managers really want to see him back as well, that would be absolutely huge. Although Jake Tonjes has been doing decent for the position in terms of fantasy points. Over the last 3 weeks, he's had over 13 fantasy points, depending on your format, including 2 touchdowns in weeks 4 and week 5. So he's been, supplemental if he's still available, or if he happens to be. I feel like tight ends are really hard to come by in terms of looking for a bright spot, trying to find some positive before we go into more injuries. So look at me. I'm trying. I'm trying.
Speaking of that same game, though, there was another major injury from that football game.
How do you feel about the fact that let's frame it this way? Let's try and do a positive framing, because yes, we now have Emeka Egbuka dealing with a hamstring injury to join the rest of the locker room of receivers that are dealing with injuries. But Baker has that dog in him and can win despite anything. And he can make anyone look good. And was it Tez Johnson that was on the sideline after the game, that when he said he kept hearing the MVP chants, he was confused. He thought they were chanting for him, and he asked his teammate if they were. And they're like, no, they're chanting for Baker. And he's like, well, that makes more sense. It's like, yes, of course it does.
I love that Tez Johnson stepped up. That was a read that was on the fly on that 45-yard touchdown connection. And this was after Emeka Egbuka got hurt. And it's been next man up, Sam, for the Buccaneers all season long on the offensive side of the ball, whether it's been on the offensive line or at wide receiver or even at running back with Rachaad White stepping up for Bucky Irving, who's on the shelf. Yeah, Baker Mayfield's making a hell of a case for MVP. If the season ended today, I think he'd be a top 3 candidate. I wouldn't be surprised if you named him the MVP, because the Buccaneers are 5-1 and they've been very banged up too. And he continues to make plays. And Sam, that 3rd and 14 conversion, I don't know if you saw it, but he was dead to rights. I think it was Bryce Huff and another 49ers defender. They basically ran into each other. While
and then he just squeaked out the back.
Squeaked out the back. Jim Nantz is like, oh, he's not going to have a chance. Oh, yes, he is. He stiff arms a guy and then lays out. Baker is playing out of his mind right now. And the reason why I'm not willing to count them out against the Detroit Lions, who are coming off of a loss against Kansas City, is because Baker continues to make it work and is playing very, very high-level football. With Emeka Egbuka, though, getting hurt. Yeah. It does hurt. It does hurt. They may get Mike Evans back this week. I don't think we're going to get Chris Godwin back.
No, it doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it, doesn't sound like it. Obviously, Jalen McMillan is still on the shelf from his preseason injury. It doesn't sound like Egbuka has a bad strain, but it is still something where I think they're going to play cautious because they're 5-1 right now. So we're talking, if you want to pick up anybody at the Buccaneers wide receivers, you can pick up Tez Johnson, you can pick up Sterling Shepard, even Cam Johnson if you really are in a deep league and you want to throw a dart or something like that. I personally think the 2 players that against the Detroit Lions that are going to benefit the most in the passing game, it's probably going to be Cade Otton, who has in back-to-back weeks seen an expanded role in the passing game, and then Rachaad White, who is automatic as a pass catcher, as a check down option. So those 2 players in what could be a high scoring game against the Detroit Lions, I like those options as kind of flex type plays in week number 7.
I like that. And then I just wanted, because I know that there's going to be a lot of people that are looking to find a receiver for a bright spot. If you had to rank between Tez and Sterling Shepard, Tez Johnson did have the touchdown in this one, which is what kind of edges him out in terms of points for performance. But who would you rather start against the Lions that you feel like fits against this defense the best?
Yeah, so Brian Branch, I believe, got suspended for week 7.
Did. I had him in IDP.
Because of that stupidity at the end of the game. But
silliness.
Also, the Detroit Lions are also dealing with some cluster injuries at the cornerback position, Sam. So in what could be a higher scoring game, and we even saw it against the Philadelphia Eagles, and even with the 45-yard touchdown pass to Tez Johnson in week 6, Baker Mayfield is willing to take his shots calculated down the football field. And that guy in this offense with these options is certainly Tez Johnson. So I'm actually far more willing to roll the dice on Tez Johnson. I don't expect a higher volume than Sterling Shepard, because Shepard kind of works in that short to intermediate range of the field. And in particular, look for him to be a factor on third downs. But if you're going to do any play action and try to take your shots vertically down the field against a secondary that's a little bit banged up and without Brian Branch, give me Tez Johnson.
All right, I like that. I also think that, Cade Otton is a good call. And someone that, I feel like sometimes he gets forgotten because it's not like, no offense to Cade. It's just
forgotten.
Come
on.
Oh my God. You hear those.
I've got range. I can do it outside of my own last name.
You have so much range. No, I think that's a really good call in terms of because I just want people to know this does have the potential to be a high scoring game, despite the fact that they've got so many injuries. The Bucs are just on one. They have so many ways to win and creative ways to win. And I just don't want to be betting against Baker Mayfield right now. It seems like anytime even someone says it on the broadcast, oh, he's down, and he's like hell I am, and he is absolutely still in this game. So I just feel like it's going to be a game to watch in terms of how they perform. Let's talk about a couple more injuries, because they are going to lead straight into more waiver wire questions. Marvin Harrison left with a head injury, likely concussion, likely going to miss this week.
Yep.
Several Cardinals players to talk about. I mean, Bam Knight, last minute, some reports came in saying he would be getting a decent share of carries going into this game. Surprise to everyone except for Adam Schefter, which I would not want to play in a league with Adam, because how quickly he went and picked him up, probably before he hit send on that notification. I would be so frustrated. But that's likely never going to happen. So anyways, I do feel like someone to talk about in terms of who you're looking for, a bright spot at the position, someone that's getting carries. Is it someone you want to spend a ton of fab on, though, just because you're looking at their next matchup? I mean, they've got Green Bay, and that's a really tough defense.
Yeah, if we're looking at other waiver wire options at the running back position, certainly Bam Knight's worth a look if you're in a tough spot with bye weeks or injuries or something of that nature. We did see the carries go from 4 to 11, Sam. And he has scored a rushing touchdown now in 2 consecutive games. So those are things that are encouraging. The matchup, not so encouraging. So that's why I would actually prioritize Kimani Vidal. And I'll take the L on this one, because
we both said it last week. So it's not your fault.
I was like, saying, oh, who's this?
Everyone got it wrong.
I sounded like super confident when I should have been. And I did mention that I liked Vidal more as a prospect. And, he looked better than Hassan Haskins, but Jim Harbaugh also saw the same thing and went ahead and just rode with the hot hand. And I think with what Kimani Vidal did, again, it's against the Miami defense. I don't want to get too excited that we're going to see encore performances, but it does seem, I feel more confident in Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman to be able to get the most out of a depleted offensive line in a running game without Amarian Hampton than I do Drew Petzing in Arizona, who was still even rolling in Michael Carter. I'd rather have the Chargers end of things with Vidal than the time split between Bam Knight and Michael Carter in Arizona.
Yeah. And then again, just talking about from the waiver wire perspective, if you're without Marvin Harrison this week, other Cardinals receivers that you could look at, I know Zay Jones is available, 1% rostered, but I mean, looking at players like Michael Wilson, who saw more targets, even Greg Dortch was getting a few targets. I just feel like if Harrison is out, you're actually just going to see targets go to Michael Wilson, Dortch, but most likely they're going to go to Trey McBride.
Yeah, I mean, we also saw Michael Carter get, some checkdowns and stuff like that. No one really stands out at wide receiver. If you're asking me, like, would I rather have a share of the Buccaneers receiver options if I'm going to the waiver wire in an attempt to throw a dart in week 7? I'd much rather go with the Buccaneers options than with the Cardinals options. But yeah, I would prioritize Greg Dortch if I had to out of those Arizona pass catchers.
I think that's fair. And I think it's important when people are weighing their waiver wire options back and forth in terms of who they want to take for best output, especially going into this week. We only have 2 teams on a bye week, the Bills and the Ravens. So thinking about the players that you're going to be without, I think that you're still going to have several wide receivers you feel confident about. You're just missing out on a couple running backs there and really not that much else. I mean, yes, you're without Josh Allen and that sucks, but Lamar Jackson hasn't been playing anyways, and I think that you've probably found other options at the quarterback position. The being without Josh Allen, that's got to hurt, though. So hopefully you have someone else to back you up. And I know we talked about the Panthers, run game. Bryce Young could end up being possibly a streaming option for some, 21% rostered, and a waiver wire candidate.
Well, I think if there is something that I believe in with Bryce Young, I do like the fact that, Ted McMillan finally found the end zone twice in week number 6 by the way. Mm-hmm. But I don't like that he's going up against Sauce Gardner. So in week number 7, if all the things about the Jets that are a problem, Sauce Gardner is not one of them.
No, but he's only one problem on the field.
I agree with that, Sam. So here's where I'm going with this. Xavier Legette made one of the I'm cheering for him as a player, but the lateral / fumble for no damn reason. Did you see that?
Excited. He was just excited.
Yeah, well, okay. You better get excited about sitting on the bench in the very near future if you're going to keep doing that, because Xavier Legette made a huge mental blunder, and it's not like he's been playing great. He's somebody who's been struggling, and for him to do that, it's just inexplicable to me. So we've seen some flashes from Jimmy Horn Jr., and we saw a return to the practice field last week, I believe, for Jalen Coker. Last week, I think he's going to be available in week 7. I love Jalen Coker. I love the ancillary options against the Jets defense, which is struggling as a whole, but not against Sauce Gardner. So I think Tedero McMillan is going to see a lot of Sauce in week number 7, which means if you're wanting to stream Bryce Young, I'm okay with it. And you can also throw a dart. I want to throw the dart at Jalen Coker if he plays. If not, I actually want to see more of Jimmy Horn Jr. I've actually seen a lot of good route running, I would say, fundamentals that he can build on moving forward.
I like that. All right. I got 2 more players I really want to talk about before we jump into our new Fact or Fiction segment, which I'm loving so much. But we've kind of plugged waivers in together with injuries, which I think is where everyone's heads are going to be at this week anyways, because we're all just juggling. But one player I want to talk about, not just because it's fun to say, but Kayshon Boutte had a great week for the Patriots, and he is only 7% rostered for the New England Patriots, another team that, has found an interesting identity for themselves in terms of performance. So kind of want to talk about them a little bit as we head into week 7 against the Saints. So it could be a kind of interesting matchup for them. And I feel like, he's had an amazing week. It is the biggest outlier when you compare the rest of his stats for the season. He had an amazing week 1, so I don't want to leave that out. Week 1, he had over 100 receiving yards on 6 catches, but then it was not that exciting. 1 touchdown in week 2, and then this past weekend, 2 receiving touchdowns, 93 receiving yards, 5 receptions on 5 targets. He was perfect, 5 for 5.
High level of difficulty on those receptions too.
Yeah, not easy catches.
Yeah, contested catches. I want to see more work for him on a consistent basis. It just seems as though Drake May is playing great football. He's going to the open receiver and not forcing things. And I think in some weeks, that's going to be Hunter Henry. In some weeks, it's going to be Stephon Diggs. Some weeks, like week 6, it'll be Kayshon Boutte. So he's worth a add. I just think he's going to be one of those kind of volatile players that is going to be a little bit tough to trust until we see it back-to-back weeks. We haven't seen it back-to-back weeks as far as volume goes, Sam. But if he keeps playing like this, it certainly is building a strong case that he can be trusted and he needs to see more work. I think he's worth an add. Even against the Tennessee Titans, though, I'm not excited to start him, but I could also be talked into it if you're in a deeper league.
Yeah. I mean, I misspoke earlier when I said who they were going up against this week. They are at Tennessee this week. I like the matchup. I think that it could be interesting. But to your point, is this a team that has the balance that we've kind of talked about from other teams in terms of—
They can't run the ball. They're all Drake May right now, which is a great thing for fantasy.
Yes. So an unbalanced team that's looking for the stars, and Boutte was the star this week. Leaving jokes aside, but could be Stephon Diggs this week, could be Hunter Henry. I mean, we don't know. It's very fair. However, just want to get it out there. 7% rostered in terms of looking for someone with amazing talent. We saw that talent, to your point, 5 for 5 on contested catches. There's a high degree of skill there that, depending on the defense they're facing, they might be covering Diggs. They might be covering Hunter Henry again, because he's been having so much success. Boutte could kind of sneak in there.
I have no problem stashing Kayshon Boutte on my bench to see what his role looks like in week number 7 against a team that is amongst the worst in the NFL, Sam. So I'm fine with it. I don't want to start him because I want to see it in multiple weeks before I put him in my starting lineup. So maybe he certainly has some upside. Like, there is some upside there, and I think he's certainly worth a roster spot.
Pick him up for the upside.
Exactly.
Maybe. All right. I want to talk about tight ends before we get into Fact or Fiction. I just want to talk about Harold Fannin Jr. for the Cleveland Browns, 25% rostered, and that feels low considering
very low
his usage. So this past week, he had 7 receptions for 81 yards on 10 targets. Did not get the touchdown, but you just love the volume. And David Njoku dealing with an injury of his own.
Yep.
I believe it's his knee. And knee injury. And he came back for a couple reps, which you like to see. So it's not going to be a season-ending situation. We love David Njoku. But does he need to be forced into this next matchup? Probably not. And then they've also got an interesting matchup against Miami. So kind of love Fannin in this one.
I honestly think that Harold Fannin should be considered a top 10 fantasy tight end for the rest of the season. And I know maybe that sounds a little bit strong because it's a Cleveland offense and yada, yada, yada. But they asked a rookie quarterback within a horrible offensive line, Sam, to drop back over 50 times against the Pittsburgh Steelers pass rush. If they are going to put Dillon Gabriel in that situation on a weekly freaking basis, like, nobody at wide receiver right now should demand any sort of high volume. If David Njoku misses any time whatsoever, then Harold Fannin has proven all season long that he is a capable pass catcher. He's an underrated athlete. I think he's a nice yak threat, which is something this offense needs desperately in the passing game as a check down option because their offensive line can't hold up. So feed Fannin. So I'm all about it. There is no reason why he shouldn't be on. He should be rostered in, you said 25%? That's insanity.
It's entirely too low. I have a theory, and I feel like it's probably not new. I'm sure someone else has said it, but I feel like for them to put Dillon Gabriel in this situation, their bye week is week 9. I feel like they're just shaping this up to force Shedeur Sanders to have a start for the season. I feel like they are. The Browns are making Browns decisions, and this feels like, I don't want to say they're looking for him to fail, but I feel like they're like, well, let's just see what else we have, because they shipped off Flacco. and they didn't necessarily need to. Like, yes, they got a 5th round pick, I believe, out of it. Yay. Delightful. However, it just feels like they're not, and maybe I'm, probably drinking the same Kool-Aid that Mike Tomlin was drinking when he said all of the comments that he did about the Browns, and I kind of loved it.
More on that later.
We're not shocked. I'm a little bit biased. But I just feel like this is a Browns gonna Brown situation, and I feel like after that bye week in week 9 against the Jets, I don't know if it's too early to call. I feel like we end up seeing Shedeur Sanders in week 10.
You can, if that's the case.
I'm crazy, I'm sure, but I'm just saying.
I really, really, really hope not. And
I'm not saying I want it to happen. I'm just saying they like to make weird decisions.
At least Dillon Gabriel has been getting the ball out of his hands and not putting the ball in harm's way.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, look at the 2 defenses that he's played in his first 2 starts, Sam. Minnesota and Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying that I expect Dillon Gabriel to be a great fantasy quarterback at any point outside of maybe a Hail Mary streaming option in a 2 QB league. But I do think better days could be ahead when this offensive line isn't playing against, treacherous pass rushes. But if Dillon Gabriel's getting the ball out of his hands quickly, and I'm encouraged by that, it looks like he's not overwhelmed at the line of scrimmage in the pre and post snap process. Shedeur Sanders holds the ball, Sam, and he fades. He drifts out of the pocket.
I'm just saying.
And if you're drifting out of the pocket when you have terrible pass protection and bad options on the outside, I think it could be a disaster, and I don't want to see it.
I'm not saying I want to see it. Maybe I do for the plot because I like the drama. But at the same time,
and you're a Steelers fan, so
I'm a Steelers fan. I just want to see them. But I just feel like, I don't know, it could happen. I won't be shocked, and I'm fine with being wrong here. I'm just saying it just feels like the dominoes are falling that are making me question, and I'm sure others are probably questioning that too. They've got Miami this week. It's a great matchup for them. If Gabriel has an amazing game here and against the Patriots in week 8, they go into the bye week up with at least 1 win under their belt. I can completely be wrong here.
I'm going to add one more name real quick to a deeper league PPR tight end guy to watch, maybe stash. Oronde Gadsden of the Los Angeles Chargers. Go Chargers, go. I missed the governor. Anyway, so Oronde Gadsden, though, 7 catches, 68 yards on 8 targets. And this was the first game Will Dissly's been back. He was a healthy scratch, Sam, in weeks 1 and week 2. Will Dissly got hurt in week 2, missed the next 3 games. That's when we saw Oronde Gadsden be promoted and to the active roster. We've seen his snap share percentage, Sam, go from 36 to 48 to 54 to 75%.
That's quite a steep climb.
What I'm trying to say is it looks like Oronde Gadsden has taken the tight end, the tight end starting role in Los Angeles. Now, do I expect 8 targets every week? Quentin Johnston wasn't there. I think that's a part of it. I also think that this was a little bit higher scoring game than the Chargers maybe expected. But Oronde Gadsden has proven that he is exactly what I thought he was coming out of Syracuse, a mismatch for opposing linebackers and safeties. He is basically just a wide receiver with a tight end position label. This kid is the real deal as a possession receiver. And if he's going to be the guy seeing snaps at that position in that offense with that quarterback for the rest of the year, I'm intrigued enough to go ahead to stash him away on my bench.
I like that. I think that's a good call out. They've got the Colts and then they've got Minnesota. So not necessarily very easy matchups, but to your point, if we should continue to monitor Quentin Johnston and see his position, because with him being out, it clearly looks like targets are going to go somewhere. And we did see Ladd McConkey have himself a really good week this week as well. Mm-hmm. So I do like that stash. Again, considering how volatile the position has been this year in terms of it's so hard to hang your hat on who are the true set it, forget it top 5 even tight ends for the season. I like the idea of being able to stash somebody else that's got some upside.
Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, let's take this into Fact or Fiction, your new segment that you've kicked off for us here. So I will let you steer. Let's play.
Yeah, sometimes facts can be stranger than fiction, right, Sam?
Yeah, they can.
So we already kind of talked about Rico Dowdle, so that one's already kind of sold on me. But fact or fiction, selling high right now on George Pickens is the right fantasy play for the rest of the season.
For the rest of the season to sell high. He had an incredible game this week. He had over 27 fantasy points. What did he have? 168 receiving yards. That's an insane volume. Selling high now, looking at...
He's been great ever since CeeDee Lamb got hurt. I mean, he's been outstanding.
Which he is out, but he's not done for the rest of the season. So CD is going to end up returning. Looks like he has chances of returning this week.
Right.
This could be your window to sell high off of that performance. Fact. Yeah, I would say that you could sell high on him right now.
I think that he's probably a wide receiver 2 the rest of the season, even with CeeDee Lamb back in the lineup, because this Dallas offense is putting up a lot of points, Sam.
They are.
And
yeah.
Pickens has been great. But is that volume where he's had, in 4 of the last 5 games, Sam, he has seen 9+ targets. Like, is that volume going to sustain when we saw in week 1 with a healthy CeeDee Lamb, he only see 4 targets? Like, I just am concerned. I think the big playability and the volatility, he's going to be more of a T. Higgins to me once CeeDee Lamb gets back into the fold. And that's not a bad thing. I still think it's a productive receiver, but right now he's the wide receiver 4 on the season. So I want to take this opportunity to get ahead of the market while CeeDee Lamb is still questionable for this week, could return this week, probably next week at the latest.
Yeah.
I'm willing to cash out my chips right now on George Pickens.
I like that. And I'm also just thinking of all the Cowboys fans that are in my work league, in different leagues, that I'm like, oh, I know who I would sell this to. Like, you've got to know your buyers as well in terms of who you're trying to move trades with. The Cowboys are definitely one where you likely have more than one Cowboys fan in your league, and you could probably get away with making a good sale because they'll have bought in, and that makes for good trade value.
So, fact or fiction, Zach Charbonnet has taken the leading fantasy back role from Kenneth Walker definitively for 2025.
Definitively?
How about this? Who would you rather have rest of the season?
I don't really want to start either of them, but at this rate, I'd rather start Charbonnet.
Why is that?
I think he just looks a little bit more dynamic in terms of on the field. Walker looks a bit slower. I mean, he's always dealing with some level of injury. They've both dropped off in terms of consistency and fantasy value. The last 2 weeks have absolutely plummeted for Walker. Yeah, I think there's just been a couple more touchdowns, it looks like, for Charbonnet. They're actually kind of even because there was
I'm with. So here's my take on it. I think that Charbonnet appears to me to have the more valuable role right now, which is when they get down close. I'm seeing a lot more of Zach Charbonnet on the field when they're inside in goal-to-go situations than I'm seeing with Kenneth Walker. I'm seeing in 4 of the 5 games they've played together this year, Sam, Zach Charbonnet has been on the field more than Kenneth Walker. Like, Walker right now, as far as an efficiency goes, he's actually a full yard better per carry than Zach Charbonnet. He's the more explosive player. I actually think Kenneth Walker looks healthy, actually, and he's got some pop, but he's just not seeing enough volume. And the worst thing is it's not supplemented by any sort of consistency in the passing game for really either of these players. So I think the tie goes to the guy that's on the field more and the guy who seems to be getting more work in goal-to-go situations. To me right now, and we have a lot of data to dig into at this point in this new offensive scheme, it looks like Charbonnet.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the utilization report tool over on fantasylife.com. Shameless plug. I love it.
Nice.
Dwayne is amazing. Doing a quick comparison for running backs for the Seahawks. Both of them don't have optimal utilization report scores. I'll give you the numbers really quickly. Walker has a score of 52 for his utilization, while Charbonnet has 50. However, when it comes to what you're talking about in terms of short down and distance snaps, Charbonnet absolutely squashes him at 65% to Walker's 33. Like, there's just certain things that he is just winning out on in terms of inside the 5 rushing attempts. Walker 30%, Charbonnet 88%. There's a lot of truth to this in the numbers in terms of who you'd rather have in the field in the red zone. Clearly the Seahawks have a favorite, and they're not hiding it well with these numbers.
And neither of them are seeing very much work in the passing game either. So there's no real advantage one way or the other. So we're talking about a similar amount of touches, it feels like. And there's one guy who seems to be the overwhelming favorite right now to get those most valuable touches from a fantasy lens.
Yeah.
So even though I think Walker is the more higher upside play and he's the more explosive player, it's just not working out to where Walker feels like the better fantasy play.
Now. No, I don't think so. All right. Does that do it for us for Fact or Fiction, or you got one more for me?
Oh, I feel like I should throw one more your way.
All righty.
And I touched on the Miami Dolphins last week.
Okay.
Sam, is Jaylen Waddle a top 10 fantasy wide receiver the rest of the season?
Top 10?
Yeah, top 10. I said it, I meant it.
I don't think he is. I feel like they're using Devon Achane in so many ways in the passing game. They're using Darren Waller in the red zone. If those names, along with others, weren't making themselves available because the Dolphins seem desperate to find a way, which you kind of want your fantasy team to be desperate. So I do appreciate a level of that. I just feel like top 10 is too steep for me for Waddle for rest of season. Tell me I'm wrong, though.
I mean, can I interest you in back-to-back games without Tyreek Hill in the mix of 6 receptions for 90-plus yards? That's what we've seen from Jaylen Waddle in this offense without Tyreek Hill in 2025. So I get the Miami offense. We've been talking about selling shares even prior to the start of the season. I was out on everything Miami, and I missed the boat on Achane. I didn't like the calf injury. I didn't like the vibes in Miami. I still don't like the vibes in Miami.
Nobody likes the vibes. Miami doesn't like the vibes in Miami. Everyone's upset. My God, that press conference was atrocious. But go on.
But the offense seems to be filtering their touches to 2 players right now, definitively, undisputably, which is Devon Achane and Jaylen Waddle.
Yeah.
Which that has to count for something, because for all of Tua's faults and all of his players' own meetings that flop, it seems as if he is still capable of anchoring and, leading a competent offense for at least 2 players to be fantasy relevant. So I think Jaylen Waddle is a low-end wide receiver 1 for the rest of the year.
Maybe low end, because it just depends on how the rest of these matchups go. But to your point, I'm just going to raise you this. We've got 7 interceptions so far on the season for Tua. As soon as he starts to bumble about, the fantasy points go down and the confidence in these targets go down. And I think you're going to continue to see red zone looks for Waller. You're going to continue to see these quick passes to Achane, who's just amazing at yards, after contact as well. I just feel like there's going to be so many other instances that they can't go to Waddle depending on the situation, just because Tua's gotten himself in a hole that he can't get out of.
I understand the Waller red zone argument. That makes sense. I understand the plethora of work that Devon Achane continues to see.
I also have him in my dynasty league.
I get that, and you got to be happy about it right now.
So much. Same team that I have Bijan.
Look, I mean,
it feels like
you just Jim Carrey and like put on the horns.
Have everyone I want.
But Jaylen Waddle is a part of that equation, Sam. So I mean, right now, Waller, as much as he's, scored 4 touchdowns in his 3 games of action coming out of retirement, yes, awesome. But the volume seems to be consistently going to Waddle, at least in between the 20s, to get them in the red area. I hear your argument on touchdown upside because Waddle's a smaller wide receiver option. Certainly not somebody with a big body that can, do his best work in the red zone. But I still think the volume is going to be there, and he's an explosive playmaker that can still pop a big one on occasion.
Hey, I want to see more fantasy points. So I'm not rooting against him. I'm just saying I feel like the Dolphins are floundering a bit. And I'll leave that pun right there as we head into Petty Parlays, another one of your amazing segments. We've got a couple matchups here that I'm excited about. First, of course, I've got to start off with Steelers-Bengals Thursday night. Do you have one for me there?
So, kids, it's time for the Tater Parlay of the day. Count them with me. 1, 2, 3-leg parlay. And we go to Pittsburgh as they take on the Cincinnati Bengals. Sam, you mentioned something about Mike Tomlin not being very happy about the hapless Cleveland Browns trading a quarterback to a quarterback-needy team in the division with Joe Flacco being traded from the Browns to the Cincinnati Bengals. And Flacco didn't have a great debut in a Cincinnati uniform, but it wasn't horrendous. They did look like they showed signs of life. I think Mike Tomlin's going to be petty about this. He's going to take it out on the Cincinnati Bengals because we saw TJ Watt and company terrorize the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. I think more is going to be in store for the fact that the Bengals took advantage of the hapless Cleveland Browns who maybe tried to stick it to the Steelers indirectly. I think they're going to bring the house at Joe Flacco. I do expect some big plays from Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on occasion, but I think more times than not, TJ Watt's going to get home. Give me 2 sacks for TJ Watt. Yeah. Not sure exactly what the odds are on that based on whatever sports book you use, but a multi-sack day for TJ Watt.
I like that. Again, I might just be here for the plot in many ways, but that's speaking my language. So
doesn't it feel like Mike Tomlin is very upset, very bothered, irked, if you will?
He doesn't normally. He's been really good about dancing around specific topics for many years. So when he opens that door just a little bit, you know that something is under his skin and he wants to go after it. So I do feel like this is a really good one.
Maybe some of that pettiness from Aaron Rodgers is starting to wear off on Tomlin. So
Rodgers is out here just giving compliments left, right, and center. Did you hear what he said about Jalen Ramsey and just like really appreciating his teammates going out there and putting in the work? Maybe there's balance. Balance is coming to both sides.
To the force.
Yes, there's balance to the force right now. And I'm not mad about it.
It's nice to know that Aaron Rodgers has become the Santa Claus of compliments there during his time in Pittsburgh.
Hey.
Moving on, the Washington Commanders taking on the old Dallas Cowboys, who are coming off of a loss against the Carolina Panthers, but also the Commanders just lost to the Chicago Bears. Mm-hmm. Sam, how good have the Dallas Cowboys been on the defensive side of the football since Dan Quinn left to become the head coach of the Washington Commanders?
Oh, that is a good question. Not that great.
Not good. Not very good. They're terrible this year. Let's fast forward to this year. We won't talk about Micah Parsons. We've moved on from that. That was already a petty parlay. I think Dak Prescott is who always says the right thing. Kind of Captain America, right?
Yes. Solid analogy.
PR perfect. Not perfect, but in a lot of ways, he says the right things. He does the right things. He's having a great year.
Yeah.
And they're coming off of a loss to the Panthers. This is a team that runs hot and cold and up and down. And all of a sudden, they're coming off of a tie against the Green Bay Packers and then lost to the Panthers. I think Dak has a big day against his former DC. who used to be his old buddy, but wants to stick it to him for leaving him high and dry in Dallas. Give me 3 touchdown passes against the Washington Commanders.
Okay. I like that. I mean, in terms of pettiness, you're right. He is a bit of a Boy Scout, Dak Prescott is, in terms of his attitude with media and how he handles himself. He's a lovely general, a lovely captain of his team. I do feel like this could be one. Again, both teams also coming up into this one scorched. Like, they need wins. Both of them need wins. And I could see the volume that Dak has had so far this season really being put on display this week.
So we're moving on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, going to the Motor City to take on the Detroit Lions. And Sam, we don't have a specific player who is, switch teams or has a revenge game narrative or anything like that for you. But the Detroit Lions did get upset in their building last year for one of their 2 losses during the regular season in 2024.
Yeah.
One of them came at the hands of Baker Mayfield and the Bucs. So one thing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Sam, struggle with this year.
Healthy players?
Well, healthy players. Thank you, Sam. Way to twist the knife. Appreciate that. Appreciate it. No, I was going to, in addition to that, it's their ability to be able to cover pass catching running backs. And Jahmyr Gibbs and the Detroit Lions just, coming off of a loss against the Kansas City Chiefs. And Jahmyr Gibbs, 65 yards rushing, 0 yards receiving in week 6. That's the first time all season that he's been held without a receiving yard. The problem is I'm old enough to remember how bad Servicier Dennis is in coverage against Bijan Robinson, who scored, a 50-something yard receiving touchdown in week number 1 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This could be a higher scoring game. I expect Gibbs to be more involved in the passing game, and he is going to be a problem for Servicier Dennis and an aging Levante David to handle in pass coverage. They even had some of their issues against Christian McCaffrey this past week. Go ahead and give me 60 receiving yards for Jahmyr Gibbs and an anytime touchdown. That's what I've got for the 1, 2, 3 leg parlay for week 7. Good luck, kids.
Amazing. Thanks, Tate. I think that's a really good one too. I'm excited about this matchup, honestly, in terms of looking at week 7 and who teams that I like to watch in terms of watching the fantasy points pour in. This is going to be one that takes the top part of my list in terms of ones I'm going to be focusing on. So I think that wraps it up for us in terms of covering your injuries, your waivers, our lovely factor fiction, as well as the lovely parlay of the day, guys. Good luck in week 7. If you haven't already, please, like I said at the beginning of the show, remember to like and subscribe to Women of Fantasy Football so you don't miss an episode of Sideline Banter, as well as the rest of the amazing content. For myself and for Derek, have a wonderful week. Good luck in week 7, and we will see you next Tuesday.